Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ramesh Separat, Chair of OIAC's Advisory Board, and welcome to our first congressional briefing in 2022.
Yes, good morning. My name is Majid Salashpour. I'm the Political Director for Organization of Iranian American Communities. I would like to welcome Iranian American community leaders from across 40 states in the country. And let me also welcome the media, especially those who are broadcasting our event live into Iran.
Yes, today marks Iran's anniversary of 1979 anti-dictatorial revolution. Shah's regime prosecuted and killed the nationalists, intellectual leaders, and democratic forces, and that empowered the network of the fundamentalist mullahs to pocket the leadership of a genuine revolution. The Ayatollahs hijacked the revolution 43 years ago, but the struggle lives on, and the torch is now shared by 3 generations of Iranians, with the resistant units on the forefront. People of Iran are struggling for a secular republic because they have rejected the single-party dictatorship of the Shah and the ruthless theocracy of the mullah. Both the mullahs and the Shah are responsible for waves of massacres, executions, arrests, and torture of political prisoners. The September 1978 Black Friday massacre in Tehran's Jaleh Square took place on Shah's watch. The 1988 massacre took place under the mullah's watch, and Ebrahim Raisi, the selected president of Supreme Leader, is directly responsible for the killing of 30,000 political prisoners that summer.
Absolutely, and yet neither the Shah nor the mullahs succeeded in ending the desire of the Iranian people for secular democratic republic. Instead, people's aspiration to establish a democratic multi-party republic is even stronger today. This is evident in 8 major nationwide uprisings over the past 4 years. That is precisely why Organization of Iranian American Communities is proud to continue its advocacy and supports Madam Rajavi's 10-point plan for a free Iran. This briefing is also very timely because as we speak, Washington and others are still searching for an Iran policy that works. As for us, our community members, the people in Iran are our cue. We take our cues from the Iranian people, are always reminded of their chants of neither crown nor turban, the clerics must go. The Iranian people, their resistance, and indeed the United States Congress have already told us what the framework of such a sound and good US policy should be. So today, we'll hear from some 50 bipartisan members of Congress.
That's right, and these public officials are representing millions of Americans from both parties, Republicans and Democrats, and will be joining us to offer their insight and policy recommendation. Throughout our program, we will also bring you the latest from inside Iran. But before we hear from our speakers, let's watch a short clip that reminds us on what took place during the 1979 revolution. incredible images, and it really reminds us the sacrifice that Iranian people are willing to take on for a free and democratic secular republic, Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored to have a video message from Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, the President-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, who has addressed this briefing from Paris. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Rajavi.
Honorable members of the U.S. Congress and our dear friends, greetings to all of you. This conference is being held on the anniversary of 1979 revolution in Iran and in a situation where we are facing extraordinary circumstances in Iran, in policies and in Iran-related developments in the Middle East and around the world. 43 years ago today, the Shah dictatorship was overthrown by the Iranian people's nationwide uprising. The Iranian people revolted against a violent tyranny. They sought freedom and democracy. But since the Shah had practically destroyed all democratic movements, he paved the way for a reactionary mullah to take power. This mullah stole the revolution's leadership by resorting to religious deception. As a result, religious fascism replaced the Shah's dictatorship. The Shah was overthrown 13 months after the then US president attended a state dinner in Iran on December 1977, in which he described Iran as an island of stability. A few months later, millions of Iranians poured into the streets chanting death to the Shah. A year later, the Shah was forced to leave the country. This was the huge gap in the US government assessments of Iran for 2 decades. Despite this bitter and damaging experience, Western policies continue to suffer from a mistaken assessment, an assessment that is far from reality. This is the gap between the illusion of a powerful regime and the reality of a theocracy on the verge of being overthrown. But the clerical regime is not only conducting domestic suppression. It fired missiles that brought down a Ukrainian passenger plane with its innocent passengers. It targets neighboring countries with missile and drones. It has expanded its nuclear weapons program, and it is constantly provoking war and terrorism in the region. What is behind this aggressive behavior? For years, the regime's leaders have said that they need a nuclear weapon to prevent the regime's overthrow. They need the bomb to blackmail Western governments, as concessions from Western governments is vital for their survival. Khamenei has repeatedly admitted that if the regime does not meddle in region, it would be forced to fight in the streets of Tehran. So it would be a catastrophic mistake to consider the regime's warmongering as a sign of strength, which leads one to make concessions to it. What is the reality? The reality can be summarized in 3 points. First, the Iranian people hate and are angry toward the regime. Over the past 4 years, there have been 8 major nationwide uprisings, including the November 2019 protests. In 2021, there were 3 major protest movements, as well as the nationwide protests by teachers and thousands of local acts of protest in all the country's provinces. These protests have continued into this year. Second, the regime that has lost its entire base and only relies on suppression to survive. Nothing says the regime is being overthrown more than the fact that Khamenei was forced to install as president Ibrahim Raisi, the henchman responsible in the massacre of 30,000 political prisoners in 1988. He did this in a fearful attempt to prevent imminent protests and uprisings. The third aspect of realities in Iran is the presence of an organized resistance. This resistance movement has paid the price for freedom by offering 120,000 martyrs so far. It can organize protests and uprisings in Iran, leading them toward the regime's overthrow. The resistance units, which are part of the MK's network in Iranian cities, carry out widespread anti-suppression activities daily. They prepare the society for more uprisings. Today, there is a democratic alternative that has powerful social support and has raised the widespread social discontent toward a goal-oriented struggle to overthrow the regime in its entirety. It is no coincidence that the clerical regime has launched an extensive demonization campaign against this resistance. It wants to implant the lie that there is no viable alternative to the regime. In the lack of an objective understanding of the situation in Iran, international policy toward Iran has suffered from very damaging mistakes in the past 4 decades. This reality can be seen in the approach to the regime's project to build nuclear weapons. When 20 years ago the Iranian resistance unveiled the bomb-making project by exposing 2 major sites in Natanz and Arak, the regime was in a vulnerable position. Instead of adopting a firm policy and imposing comprehensive sanctions, the world community wasted a decade in useless negotiations with the regime, providing it with the opportunity to advance its nuclear project. And when the sanctions imposed by the US Congress and the UN Security Council resolutions began to have an impact on justified concessions in the context of the 2015 nuclear deal, eliminated the chance to dismantle the regime nuclear weapons program. Now, that scenario is being repeated. As I said, on the day when the 2015 nuclear deal was signed, the only correct step to permanently stop Tehran from getting the bomb was the reimposition of the Security Council resolutions, an end to enrichment, the dismantling of the nuclear sites, and anytime and everywhere inspections. Every dollar of the Iranian people's assets that is given to the regime will be spent on suppression at home, the export of terrorism and warmongering, or plundered by the regime leaders. Obviously, the lifting of the sanctions will only lead to more conflict, carnage, and insecurity in the region. The US Congress, which represents the conscience of American society, has adopted a realistic approach to the Iranian matter, as was reflected in House Resolution 118. Congress supports the struggle of the Iranian people against two dictatorships, supports their desire to establish a democratic republic. I would like to extend my gratitude to honorable members of the US Congress who are standing with the people of Iran. We hope that Congress shapes US policy in a way that mistakes committed during the Shah's regime are avoided, and that US policy distances itself from approaches that appease the mullahs. The right policy is within reach. This is a policy that recognizes the right of the Iranian people and the Iranian resistance to overthrow the religious fascism ruling Iran. Thank you all.
And thank you so much, Mrs. Rajavi, for your insightful remarks, sharing with us the realities about Iran. And of course, today we will be hearing from members of Congress as they offer their solution and a path forward aligned with your remarks. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our first member of Congress, senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and also the leading sponsor, Democratic sponsor of the House Resolution 118. Please help me welcome Congressman Brad Sherman.
Hello, I'm Brad Sherman from California's best named city, Sherman Oaks. I'm pleased to join the Organization of Iranian American Communities to commemorate the anniversary of Iran's 1979 revolution. The revolution may have started with talk of democracy, but ultimately forced the Iranian people to live under an autocratic and corrupt regime that targets its own people and is the chief state sponsor of international terrorism from Syria to Lebanon to Gaza to Europe and South America and across the globe. We have often heard this story firsthand from our neighbors in Los Angeles, the Iranian American community, particularly the San Fernando Valley, many of whom fled to escape the repression of this regime. Despite originating humanity's very first human rights document, the Cyrus Cylinder, the Iranian people have faced abysmal human rights conditions since this day, 43 years ago. We must not forget what this regime is and has been capable of doing. The world should not forget the mass murders carried out by the Iranian regime in 1988. It was in July of that year that Ayatollah Khomeini issued the bloody order to, quote, annihilate the enemies of Islam immediately. Executions of thousands continued for months, with hundreds of people hanged each and every day before being buried in a mass, unmarked grave. Today, we know that as many as 30,000 political prisoners had their lives taken from them, taken because they supported the dream of a free Iran. President Ruiz, his human rights record has been even worse than his predecessors, with executions rising dramatically. According to Amnesty International, Iran is the most prolific user of capital punishment in the region and second worldwide only after China. Tragically, just a few days ago, the regime executed its latest victims, 2 gay men who were murdered as a result of the country's archaic anti-sodomy laws. For too long, the Iranian people have been deprived of their fundamental freedoms, for which reason they rejected dictatorship in 1979 and oppose religious tyranny today. And that's why I became the chief sponsor of House Resolution 118, expressing support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear republic of Iran, and condemning violations of human rights and state-sponsored terrorism by the current Iranian regime. I have long been dedicated to helping those who are trying to achieve democracy in Iran. For example, back in 2019, before this epidemic, I spoke at the Free Iran rally outside the State Department to express my solidarity with the brave Iranians protesting for a new chapter in Iran's history. 1,500 of those protesters were killed during the 2 weeks of unrest, and thousands more were detained and subjected to widespread torture, including beatings, floggings, electric shocks, stress positions, mock executions, watering boards, sexual violence, forced administration of chemical substances, and the deprivation of medical care. Last Congress, I supported and helped pass through the House Resolution 752, supporting the rights of the people of Iran to free expression, condemning the Iranian regime for its crackdown on legitimate protests. In this Congress, I have co-sponsored H Resolution 497 and H Resolution 744, which condemn Iran's state-sponsored persecution of the LGBTQ plus community and of religious minorities such as the Baha'i. As long as I am in Congress, I will continue to fight for the dream of a free, democratic Iran. Thank you for standing with me to move toward that dream. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Congressman Sherman, for standing with us and with the Iranian people when it comes to the cause of human rights, democracy, freedom. So our next member of Congress is Congressman Randy Weber from Texas. Congressman Weber is a member of House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. Please help me welcome Congressman Weber.
Folks, the people of Iran are strong. History proves this. By overthrowing the Shah's dictatorship, the people of Iran showed their dedication and willingness to sacrifice. The 1979 anti-dictatorial revolution was genuine and deep-rooted in the desire of the Iranian people for freedom, democracy, and human rights. Clerics led by Ruhollah Khomeini stole leadership of the revolution and consolidated power in the first few months after the revolution, eliminating any voices of dissents, repressing the intellectuals and democratic forces, and waging war on the Iranian people. In fact, the leading democratic forces, particularly the MEK, were the main targets of repression, as tens of thousands of their members and supporters have been killed. But they never lost their desire for freedom. Still today, the desire of the Iranian people for the same goals of the 1979 revolution are alive and even deeper. Over the past 3 years, there have been 8 major nationwide uprisings in Iran. Only in November 2019, the Iranian regime murdered 1,500 people. Protests continued in 2021, and there were twice as many protests and strikes compared to 2020. I am a proud co-sponsor of H-Res 118, which, quote, recognizes the rights of the Iranian people and their struggle to establish a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear republic of Iran, end quote. This resolution highlights that the people of Iran rejected monarchical dictatorship and are opposing religious tyranny. The resolution, H-Res 118, also notes support for the opposition leader, Mrs. Maryam Rajavi's 10-point plan for the future of Iran, which calls for the universal right to vote, free elections, and a market economy, and advocates gender, religious, and ethnic equality, a foreign policy based on peaceful coexistence, and a non-nuclear Iran. Since Ibrahim Raisi has taken office, more executions have taken place, but that has not silenced the population. Raisi's selection was meant to crush the protests as well as increase confrontations with the West, all with the aim of developing nuclear weapons and expanding terrorism in the region. Ibrahim Raisi was a member of the Death Committee in 1988 and responsible for the massacre for as many as 30,000 political prisoners in Iran. He must be brought to justice before international tribunals for crimes against humanity and genocide. The nuclear talks in Vienna have proven to be counterproductive, as concessions offered by the United States to Iran has actually further emboldened the Iranian regime, and Tehran's demands increase every week. Giving concession to the Iranian regime will embolden them to kill their own people, to wage terror in the region, and rapidly dash to a nuclear bomb. I urge the Biden administration to quickly change course with Iran and pay attention to what over 250 bipartisan House members said in HRES 118, and that is, we stand with the people of Iran who are continuing to hold legitimate and peaceful protests against an oppressive and corrupt regime. Iran deserves that.
Thank you, Congressman Weber. Iran indeed deserves better. It is our honor to welcome Congressman Don Bacon to our program today. Mr. Bacon is a member of the House Committee on Armed Services.
For over 40 years, the Iranian people fought for fundamental freedoms and have rejected a monarchic dictatorship and a religious autocracy. In recent years, protests hostile to the Iranian regime spread like wildfire, reaching 100 cities across the nation. Regrettably, lethal force was used by Iranian security forces, killing an estimated 1,500 fellow citizens. The Iranian regime is in constant violation of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In 1988, the Iranian regime killed their own due to differing viewpoints. In 1999, 2009, and 2017, political protests were held and Iranian citizens' voices were violently silenced by the regime. It is my belief that it should be the policy of the United States to investigate and hold Iranian officials accountable for the extrajudicial killings of Iranian dissidents. To those who continue holding legitimate and peaceful demonstrations against an oppressive and corrupt regime, I commend and support you. Your bravery and commitment to standing strong against a tyrannical regime gives hope to all. Under the United Nations, Iranian citizens are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When any government seeks to destroy and strip those rights away from you, it is within your right to peacefully demonstrate and regain your freedoms. We should always be fighting for a republic, non-nuclear, and secular Iran. I will continue to work with my colleagues on the House Armed Services Committee and other members of Congress to push for an investigation into the disgraceful actions of President Raisi and his involvement in the 1988 massacre. He must be held accountable for crimes against humanity. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all today.
Thank you, Congressman Bacon, for raising a key point, which is accountability. It is important that the tyrannical regime in Tehran is held to account for its crimes against humanity. Our next speaker is a longtime friend of the Iranian people and of our communities in the United States. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is a member of Congress from Texas and is a member of the House Committee on Homeland Security.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I represent the 18th Congressional District in Texas, and I'm a proud co-sponsor of the House Resolution 118, the resolution that focuses on the absolute necessity for democracy in Iran. It is so very important to promote the people who love democracy. And in this anniversary of the 1979 popular anti-dictatorial revolution, where people stood up to be able to fight for democracy, we want to say that it is important to receive that democracy and to be able to speak against the massacre of 1988, the political prisoners, the suppression of peaceful demonstrations in 1999 and 2009, 2017 and 2019. When does it ever end? It is when good people say something. And for far too long, Iran and the people have suffered from the lack of fundamental freedoms, but they're fighting for their freedoms. Iranians deserve the right to vote and to be confident that there is a democracy for them and their families. That is what we stand here and support. We want a peaceful Iran. We want an Iran that welcomes its family and its people. And we're calling now for democratic, secular, non-nuclear Iran. We believe in the work that was done in the Obama administration that insisted on a non-nuclear Iran. We want a democratic Iran where the ballot box is important and as well social justice is lifted up. So I want to thank you for having me, because all the years that I've had the privilege of knowing Iranian Americans, I've known their fight for freedom, their fight for a democratic Iran, and their fight for their families and for the suppressed to be relieved, and for the prisoners that are peaceful and only want democracy to be freed. And so as the last month, we honored Dr. Martin Luther King, someone that I've always studied. He had these words, "Why we can't wait for democracy and justice." And he also had these words, and I remind you of them: "The arc of the moral universe bends long, but it bends toward justice." And our dear friend, Representative John R. Lewis, said, "Never give up, never give in, and never give out. Democracy now, democracy forever." Thank you.
And thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And indeed, democracy now, democracy forever. And thank you for sharing with us your thoughts on Dr. King and, of course, the late Congressman John Lewis. We miss him dearly. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to also introduce Congressman Scott Perry. Congressman Perry is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Please help me welcome Congressman Perry.
Hi, I'm Congressman Scott Perry. Just taking a moment to acknowledge what happened in 1979. I remember well the Iranian Revolution for freedom. They wanted to throw off the chains of one-party rule where they could actually choose their leadership and who oversaw their country and who governed it. Of course, it didn't work out the way that they had hoped it would, and we know the American story as well involved with Iran. But at this time, it's important to acknowledge that the revolution was about freedom for the Iranian people, and they still want that. And so at this time, they want to have a secular government. They want a government where they can choose their leaders, where they can be free to practice the religion they want, as opposed to living under a theocracy. So all this time later, let's just renew the spirit of that revolution. And if it's time to throw off that theocracy, let's not forget that. So we wish God's blessings on the people of Iran who yearn to breathe free and to renew their faith in their fight for freedom.
Thank you so much, Congressman Perry. And we are now very pleased to introduce Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick. Congressman Fitzpatrick is also member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Please help me welcome Congressman Fitzpatrick.
Hey everyone, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick here. And February marks the anniversary of Iran's 1979 revolution, which saw the end of a monarchical dictatorship and the beginning of the repressive Islamic Republic. During this month, Iranian American communities across the nation recommit themselves to the causes that prompted this historic revolution: freedom, democracy, independence, and social justice. Iranians deserve the right to choose their own future. Now more than ever, it is critical that we continue to support the democratic aspirations of the people of Iran that have been denied for so long. And in doing so, we must condemn the Iranian regime's human rights abuses against dissidents and minorities and stand with the people of Iran who continue to hold legitimate and peaceful protests against the oppressive and corrupt regime. This Congress, I joined 249 bipartisan colleagues in co-sponsoring House Resolution 118, which expresses this sentiment and emphasizes the importance of democracy, human rights, and holding human rights abusers in Iran accountable. As the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Europe, Energy, and the Environment and Cyber, I remain committed to ensuring the United States stand in support of recognizing the rights of the Iranian people and their struggle to establish a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Iranian republic. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Congressman Fitzpatrick, for your wonderful remark. Majid, many members of Congress so far are referring to the House Resolution 118. I think it's really important for us to take a moment and talk about this historic resolution because it does have a support of more than 250 members of Congress from both parties on the very pillars that Congressman Fitzpatrick just referred to in terms of Iranian people's rights to continue their protest against this regime, and of course, other members who talked about it. I think members of Congress are explicitly rejecting both the Shah and the mullahs, and that is also outlined in the House Resolution 118. Yes. And it offers a path forward because it does talk about Mrs. Rajavi's 10-point plan. We heard it from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee. We heard it from Congressman Weber. So let's talk about what else does this resolution talk about.
Of course, thank you. What you mentioned is exactly correct. On the note about Madam Rajavi, House Resolution 118 mentions, and I quote, support for the opposition leader, Mrs. Maryam Rajavi's 10-point plan for future of Iran, which calls for the universal right to vote, free elections, and a market economy, and advocates gender, religious, and ethnic equality, a foreign policy based on peaceful coexistence and non-nuclear Iran, end quote.
And that's one of the key elements of what to look forward after the downfall of this regime.
Yep, exactly. And HRES 118 goes further. It demands that the United States should be involved in the establishment of an international investigation into the 1988 extrajudicial killings of Iranian dissidents, a point many members of Congress thus far have mentioned. This call is gaining significant momentum globally among the international community at the UN and beyond, and becoming more pressing now because Ebrahim Raisi is now regime's president.
That's right.
With this resolution, members of Congress, in a bipartisan manner, are literally calling for an investigation of Raisi.
And Congressman Don Bacon also talked about it in his remark, absolutely. So I think it is actually worth reminding again that this resolution was adopted, was actually introduced by more than 250 members of both parties within the 100 days of the Biden administration. And it really gained a majority, dozens of committee chairs, ranking members, and majority of the House Foreign Affairs Committee signed on to this resolution. So it's quite impressive because the resolution not only elaborates about the terrorism threat and the violations of human rights, but it offers a solution, namely the alternative to this regime. And I think Mrs. Rajavi also mentioned in her remark that how she is looking to have the US Congress to set the right tone on US policy and really correct the past mistakes on US policy. So with that, let's go to our next speaker. It's my great pleasure to introduce Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, who's also who's a member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Please help me welcome Congressman Krishnamurthy.
Hi everybody, I'm Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of the 8th District of Illinois. I want to say a special thank you to the Iranian American community of Illinois for inviting me, and thank you to Ali and Ozra, Fatima and Samar. Today we commemorate the anniversary of the 1979 revolution for freedom in Iran. We say no to Shah's single-party dictatorship, no to mullah's theocracy, and yes to democracy and a republican form of government. I am proud to be a co-sponsor of House Resolution 118 to express support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. And I support the resolution's condemnation of violations of human rights and state-sponsored terrorism by the Iranian government. Democracy is a gift and a blessing that I wish for the citizens of Iran. I hope that gift is closer within reach this coming year. Thank you again for allowing me to virtually greet you, and I wish to be with you in person next time. In the meantime, please be well.
Thank you so much, Congressman Krishnamurthy, and we look forward to being with you, hopefully in person soon. So it's my pleasure now to introduce Congressman Steve Womack, also a member of the Appropriation Committee. Please welcome Congressman Womack.
Hello, I'm Congressman Steve Womack, representing the 3rd District of Arkansas. I'm pleased to share a few words with members of the Organization of Iranian American Communities from Arkansas and across the nation. I know there are some families from my district, in Gentry and Fayetteville, committed to this work. A government earns its legitimacy from the people it governs. We all know that authoritarians who put their own interests ahead of their country will never hold power forever. It's critical that we separate Iran's governing authorities from the Iranian people, most of whom crave basic human freedoms. The Iranian people recognize the massive fraud perpetrated on them by their rogue leaders. With a decimated economy and suppression of human rights, the Iranian regime continues to ignore domestic priorities. Instead, they're duly focused on oppressing their citizens, funding terror, ballistic missile testing, and the development of their nuclear program. This blatant disregard for the well-being of their citizens shows Iran's rulers for what they are: tyrants enriching themselves and expanding their power at the expense of the people they govern. It's why I proudly support HRES 118 and legislative proposals that stand against the oppressive rule and aggressive behavior of the mullahs. To all those watching, we support the Iranian people in their pursuit of democracy and holding the Iranian regime accountable for its many abuses. It's the moral thing to do, and it's also critical to international security. Thank you for all you do to confront this corrupt regime and support the Iranian people who are dedicated to creating a true republic.
Thank you, Congressman Womack. It is indeed the moral thing to do. With that, I want to welcome a good friend of our community, Congressman Joe Wilson. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends of the people of Iran, on this anniversary of the Iranian Revolution, I am grateful to address the Iranian American community, which remains as dedicated to the cause of democracy and freedom from the tyrannical theocratic oppression. I was grateful to introduce the Iran Human Rights and Accountability Act this Congress on the eve of Nowruz, which would hold the Iranian officials accountable for gross violations of human rights against the Iranian people. Iranians deserve to live in peace with self-determination. We will not forget these dissidents who were abused or killed at the hands of the regime. And we stand with those in pursuit of a secular democratic Iran to recover and relive the glory of what has been an extraordinary part of a Western civilization, which is the culture of Persia. God bless.
Thank you, Congressman Wilson. I want to welcome Congresswoman and Chairwoman Zoe Lofgren as the next speaker at this event. She is the chair of the House Administration and member of the Judiciary Committee.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, representing California's 19th Congressional District. I certainly appreciate the invitation from the Iranian American community of Northern California to speak with you during your Free Iran conference this year. I also appreciate your ongoing advocacy for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Iran. I stand with you in strong opposition to the Iranian government's promotion of terrorist activities and its violation of human rights. As you know, at the end of 2019, the Iranian people courageously rose up and exercised their fundamental freedoms. In response, the Iranian government subjected these peaceful protesters to violence and lethal force. In the House of Representatives, I have co-sponsored H-Res 118, which condemns the Iranian regime's human rights abuses. It's important for Congress to acknowledge that these rights violations are unacceptable and that the continual crackdown of peaceful protests in Iran must end. Together, we must promote peace and democracy. Again, I thank you for inviting me to speak with you today and for your steadfast commitment to human rights.
And thank you so much, Chairwoman Lofgren. We really appreciate your support, and together we will stand as we stand up for human rights and democracy, and we will see a peaceful and a democratic non-nuclear republic Iran soon. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to introduce Congressman Scott Peters, members of House Budget Committee, Energy and Commerce.
I'm Congressman Scott Peters, and I'm honored to represent San Diego, Coronado, and Poway in the United States Congress. Thank you for the invitation to speak at today's event. Since 1979, the Iranian people have yearned for the opportunity to live in a democratic, secular, non-nuclear republic free from oppression by kings, dictators, and religious extremists. Men, women, children, Kurds, Baha'i, Christians, Jews, and Muslims have all suffered for decades at the hands of an oppressive regime solely focused on maintaining absolute power rather than helping the Iranian people. Abuse and torture are common occurrences as security forces attempt to silence those speaking out for democracy and equal rights. I'm here today to stand with the Iranian people and condemn the heinous acts of the Iranian government in the strongest of terms. Persia, as Iran was formerly known, is home to one of the world's oldest civilizations. For thousands of years, it was a center for art, literature, philosophy, and innovation. We must support the Iranian people as they fight for a prosperous future that reflects their prosperous past. I will continue to call out human rights violations and state-sponsored terrorism. I will also support policies that create an atmosphere in which all Iranians can succeed regardless of gender, religion, or personal background. By doing so, we can honor the legacy and hard work of generations past as we work to build a better future. I hope you'll join me by saying yes to democracy and yes to an independent republic. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Congressman Peters, and yes to democracy and yes to a republic. So at this point, it's my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Chair of Hispanic Caucus and member of Energy Commerce Committee, Congressman Raul Ruiz. Please welcome Congressman Ruiz.
Hello, my name is Congressman Raul Ruiz. Today, we commemorate the anniversary of the 1979 Revolution for Freedom in Iran. I am immensely proud of the growing Iranian American community in my district and in California, and I commend the continued sacrifice the Iranian people make to achieve a republic that would best deter another tyrant. Standing up for the human rights of the people of Iran is necessary and sends a strong message to Iranians that America and all peace-loving people stand with them in their pursuit of liberty, democracy, and a peaceful Iran. That is why I co-sponsored H-Res 118, which underlines a plan to promote a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. This resolution condemns past and present Iranian state-sponsored terrorist attacks against United States citizens and officials, as well as Iranian dissidents. The resolution stands with the people of Iran who are continuing to legitimately and peacefully protest an oppressive and corrupt regime. The House must pass HRES 118 to send a clear message to the Iranian people. The American people stand with you. The Iranian people have spoken, and the United States has heard you and stands with you in solidarity. Know that we will continue supporting you as you fight for your basic rights, freedom, and democracy. I applaud you for convening this gathering today to let the world know that the majority in the United States Congress condemns Iran's malignant behavior in the region and supports the people's right for freedom and liberty. To the Iranian people seeking freedom, democracy, and human rights, I stand with you. The United States Congress stands with you, and the American people stand with you. Thank you.
Dr. Ruiz, thank you very much for a wonderful message. Here, what we heard from you is that the people of Iran need the United States Congress and the international community to stand with them. And thank you. And I'm sure your constituents will be happy to hear these words. Our next speaker is Congressman Neil Dunn. He's a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee.
February marks the anniversary of the 1979 Revolution for Freedom in Iran. When I think back to this event, I think of a tremendous courage, sacrifice, and perseverance displayed by the people of Iran. I saw the same thing throughout the last decade as the Iranian people took to the streets to protest the corrupt government. Unfortunately, I also saw the Iran regime commit heinous acts with complete disregard for human rights. Many of you were in the United States during this difficult time and witnessed your family and friends being oppressed from miles away. I know how difficult that must have been for you. Everyone here has probably asked themselves, is it worth it? Let me remind you that America started out in a similar way, and it took many years for our country to become the land of liberty that we know today. It took tenacity and strength, qualities I know that you and your loved ones have. And there isn't an American out there who regrets the freedoms that they enjoy today. So yes, it is worth it. I encourage you to keep fighting for your fundamental freedoms. We must continue to speak out against tyranny, corruption, crimes against humanity. We must continue to fight for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Dunn. You mentioned a few things, tenacity and strength. Those words aptly describe the people of Iran and their resistance for change, democratic change in Iran. I want to welcome our next speaker, Congressman Brad Schneider. He's a member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs.
Hi, I'm Congressman Brad Schneider. I am pleased to address your conference today. Your activism and engagement is critical for holding Iran and countries across the world accountable to its citizens. Throughout my time in Congress, I've advocated for and worked to ensure the United States government holds Iran accountable for its reprehensible human rights abuses and its intolerance of political opposition. I know that the Iranian people want freedom and justice, and we must stand up for those seeking a better life for themselves. The Iranian regime's extensive record of abuse spans decades. There was, of course, the 1979 revolution, the mass human rights abuses in 1988, 2009, 2017, and 2019 when more than 1,500 protesters were killed. The 2019 crackdown was the deadliest incident since the 79 protests. It is essential that we memorialize the thousands of Iranians who have lost their lives over the past decades. The United States must always stand with those who exercise their political rights. The Middle East and the entire world will benefit from leaders and countries that respect freedoms we all hold so near and dear. We must continue doing everything we can to speak out against Iran's human rights abuses and hold the regime to account. This also includes preventing Iran from ever acquiring a nuclear weapon. Because of Iran's support for Hezbollah and other terrorist proxies, it's imperative that the US and their allies work together to keep nuclear weapons out of Iran. Thank you for the awareness you bring to Iranian struggle for freedom and for lending a voice to the voiceless.
And thank you so much, Congressman Schneider, for raising the issue, the nuclear issue on Iran, and we always appreciate your support. So at this point, we have Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, and she is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Please welcome Congresswoman.
Hey, it's Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. It's my honor to recognize all of those who are gathered as we commemorate the 43rd anniversary of the people in Iran marching to the streets for their freedom and against an oppressive regime. In 1979, they were killed by forces on the street. It's their own government suppressing their voices. And it's very reminiscent of my background, being the daughter of a Cuban refugee. Just this last summer, we saw innocent Cuban people, even young teens, being jailed, being beaten, and even killed because they wanted freedom. We as Americans are so fortunate to have freedom, to have liberties, and we must work very hard to preserve that. But as the leader of the free world, we also must be a strong voice for democracy and freedom around the world. I stand with the Iranian people in their quest for freedom, and particularly under this new president, Raisi, we need to ensure that America's voice is louder than ever. Thank you, and God bless all of you who are gathered today in support of the Iranian people.
And thank you, and you're absolutely right. America's voice should be louder now that Raisi is the selected president of the Iranian regime. So it is my great pleasure to also welcome Congressman Raul Carter, member of Budget Committee. Please welcome Congressman Carter.
February marks the anniversary of the 1979 revolution in Iran, which toppled its monarchy and took a step forward in the direction towards democracy. We take time this month to recognize and honor the bravery and sacrifice of the revolutionaries who fought for the rights of their fellow Iranians. We also want to bring attention to the religious fascism that has since taken power. The Iranian people have been deprived of their fundamental freedoms for far too long. This led to the 1979 revolution and is now what inspires the Iranian people to turn away from religious tyranny and look towards a free, democratic future. The Iranian government has consistently been hostile towards its people. In November of 2019, popular protest against the Iranian regime began and spread like wildfire throughout the nation. Although these protests were peaceful and full of unarmed citizens, the Iranian government responded violently and with lethal force, resulting in the death of around 1,500 people. This kind of rule is entirely unacceptable and inhumane. I have the utmost respect for Iranians who peacefully combat this tyrannical regime and know that I stand with you. The rights of the Iranian people are in jeopardy, and I support any peaceful effort to reestablish a secular, democratic Republic of Iran that respects the religious freedoms of her people. No longer would these human rights abuses be tolerated or go unnoticed. I'm honored to join with the Iranian freedom fighters this month as we raise awareness to the government abuses being perpetrated by the Iranian government, as well as the struggle of the Iranian people who wish for nothing more than the fundamental human right to freedom.
Fundamental human rights to freedom. Yeah. That's absolutely correct, Congressman Carter. It is our pleasure to actually acknowledge members and leaders of the Iranian communities from across more than 40 states in US. I see Virginia, I see Maryland, I see many friends and leaders from Pennsylvania. I see Texas.
Yes, absolutely. California, Colorado, Missouri,
welcome Kansas, everyone.
Illinois.
Ohio, I see Ohio, yep. I see Connecticut, Massachusetts, Florida, Minnesota, Arizona, Washington State, Oregon, New Mexico, Nevada.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. New York State, of course.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, we can't name them all, but we thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us today.
We commend you for all of your hard work, and we understand it is your absolute hard work that has brought us to this significant campaign with U.S. Congress. So thank you so much to members and leaders of Iranian American communities. Ladies and gentlemen, just yesterday in the city of Mashhad, the PA system in a popular shopping center was interrupted with a message from the brave Iranian resistance unit in their everyday form of resistance. This is the latest act in a popular shopping center where they actually broadcasted the message of death to Khamenei, Viva Rajavi, death to the tyrant, be it the Shah or the supreme leader. We now have a clip of that incredible event, and this event was actually acknowledged by the local authorities and the regime. It was well received by the people of Iran across the country, and it really reminds us that the mullahs are in their last days. Let's watch together. Incredible, incredible, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually receiving a breaking news from our colleagues, breaking news from inside Iran. We have received multiple video clips of a similar act that just took place about 4 hours ago in the city of Karaj, which is the fourth largest city in Iran, and also Fardis and Shahr-e-Rey. And these acts included loud chants of death to Khamenei, down with Khomeini, and Viva Rajavi. These chants and slogans, there were also chants and slogans against the Shah's dictatorship, as they were saying, neither the crown nor the turban, the mullah's time is over. Our media team is standing by for the media and the press that are joined us today to share these clips with you. Unfortunately, we're not able to share with the audience, but it will be shared with everyone right after the program. So with that, let's move on.
This is amazing. I don't know what to say. It's really actually very timing on the 43rd anniversary of the 1979 revolution. Let's now hear from Congressman Tim Burchett. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and a good friend of our community in the United States.
Hey everybody, it's Congressman Tim Burchett. I just want to thank y'all so much for inviting me to reflect on the 43rd anniversary of the 1979 revolution in Iran. I support, of course, the free democratic government in Iran. The current regime, of course, is a bunch of thugs. They sponsor terrorism and they oppress their citizens. Iranian citizens, I think they deserve basic human rights, as all Americans do. And I condemn the current regime's treatment of the freedom-loving Iranians. I appreciate y'all's organization's efforts to advance this cause, and I thank y'all so much for letting me address you.
Thank you very much, Congressman Burchett. Our next speaker is Congressman Blake Moore. He's a member of the House Committee on Armed Services.
Hello, I'm Congressman Blake Moore. I'm honored to join you virtually today on the anniversary of a historic day in Iran's history, when Iranians joined together to speak out and fight against tyranny. A day that began with such hope and optimism was trampled by religious extremists peddling cruel despotism by the illusion of a theocratic Republican constitution. Many of you experienced the cruelties and sufferings firsthand. Today, I want to remember the optimism of February 1979. While some may question this sentiment in the face of such harrowing adversity, I maintain hope because of the steady, stoic grit of the Iranian people. When the movement arises, Iran will be liberated by pro-democracy activists fighting in Iran and freedom-loving Iranian Americans. Here in Washington, I have been working to complement your efforts. I was proud to co-sponsor the Bipartisan House Resolution 118, legislation condemning Iran's state-sponsored terrorism and expressing support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, non-nuclear Iran. In this year's National Defense Authorization Act, I successfully offered an amendment which prohibited any Department of Defense funds, currency, or any items of value to the government of Iran as a part of an Iran nuclear deal. I oppose the misguided and fateful nuclear deal, which emboldened the criminals in Tehran. I will fight to maintain maximum pressure against this regime. Sadly, the world must remain vigilant, as the terror of the Ayatollah extends well past its borders. From Europe to South Asia, Iranian proxies across the globe spread violence, terror, and religious extremism. The people of Iran will determine their own future, and I will continue to fight for a free press, free speech, religious liberty, and representative government. The barbaric imprisonment and execution of courageous, pro-democracy activists must come to an end and the aggressors held accountable. Thank you for your efforts fighting for the Iranian people. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today with friends who are also looking forward to a brighter future and a free Iran. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Congressman Moore. You spoke of grit, and we also talk about the resiliency of the MEK resistance unit that are on the forefront to bringing this regime down and bringing democracy, freedom, and human rights. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Congressman Ralph Norman, member of Homeland Security Committee.
Hello, I'm Ralph Norman, Congressman of South Carolina's 5th Congressional District. This February, we recognize the anniversary of the Iranian Revolution and its mark in history fighting for a free and a democratic government. There are only two sides to democracy, those who are for freedom and those who are against it. There is no in between. I support the bravery of those who stand up in the name of freedom against oppressive and controlling regimes. We will never stop fighting for freedom, and once achieved, we must continue to defend it. I encourage the continued commitment to democracy and will continue to support those who fight for it. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Congressman Norman. So it is now a great pleasure to introduce our next member of Congress, Congresswoman Teresa Fernandez, member of Education and Labor Committee.
Hello, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Teresa Fernandez, serving the beautiful and beautifully diverse 3rd Congressional District of New Mexico. Democracy and human rights are the foundation upon which we build a free and fair country that values and respects the voices and dignity of its citizens. Free and open discussion, citizen-led organizing, and peaceful dissent are some of the most valuable rights a government can allow and encourage. The current government of Iran has continuously rejected these basic democratic values. which is why I support House Resolution 118. This resolution expresses support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran and condemns violations of human rights and state-sponsored terrorism by the Iranian government. In recognition of this symbolic day, I fully support the people of Iran's right to engage in legitimate and peaceful protests against the Iranian regime and will always stand against terrorism and human rights abuses. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Our next speaker is Congressman Greg Stewart. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
I'm Congressman Greg Stewart, and I proudly represent Florida's 17th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. As a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and Vice-Ranking Member of the Middle East, North Africa, and Global Counterterrorism Subcommittee, I stand with the people of Iran as they continue to hold legitimate and peaceful protests against the oppressive regime. I recognize the rights of the Iranian people and their struggle to establish a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. During his presidency, President Trump spoke in support of the Iranian people, saying, "Most of Iran's 80 million citizens have sadly never known an Iran that prospered in peace with its neighbors and commanded the admiration of the world. But the future of Iran belongs to its people. They are the rightful heirs to a rich culture in an ancient land, and they deserve a nation that does justice to their dreams, honor to their history, and glory to God." And I completely agree. As the current administration continues to take the wrong approach on U.S.-Iran policy, it has emboldened the Iranian regime. In Congress, I introduced and co-sponsored numerous bills, such as the Sanctioning Iranian-Backed Militant Terrorist Act, which imposes sanctions on Iranian-backed militia groups and terrorist organizations. I will continue to address Iranian aggression and push for powerful sanctions. On this anniversary of the 1979 Revolution for Freedom in Iran, we must not turn our backs on the Iranian people as they push to destabilize and delegitimize this corrupt regime. My hope for the Iranian people is that they continue to mobilize for a free Iran.
Thank you, Congressman. Indeed, the future of Iran belongs to the Iranian people, and we hope the international community does not turn their back against the Iranian people. Our next speaker is Congressman Mo Brooks. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee.
Hi, I'm Congressman Mo Brooks from Alabama's 5th Congressional District. This February marks 43 years since the people fought in the bloody Iranian Revolution for freedom, liberty, and a democratic Iran, but instead ultimately lost to despotism, oppression, and unwarranted aggression towards America. As is often the case when dictators rise to power, freedom-loving people are brutally killed. 33,000 brave Iranians laid down their lives in the fight for freedom. We remember them on this anniversary. Their sacrifice for freedom is not in vain. Iranians around the world still seek freedom and a truly Republican form of government in which individual rights are paramount. These individuals desire a non-nuclear Iran and contemn the dictatorship and one-party rule that reigns in Iran while regularly chanting death to America. The American people stand with freedom-loving Iranians who bravely fight for and seek a just, free, and peaceful Iran. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Congressman Brooks. We now hear from another member of Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Andy Barr, who's joining us. Please welcome Congressman Barr.
Hello, this is U.S. Congressman Andy Barr, and I'm honored to address you all and renew our shared support for a free Iran. Thank you for all the pro-democracy activists working tirelessly on behalf of this cause. In Congress, I'm working to support your efforts. I proudly co-sponsored the bipartisan House Resolution 118, a resolution condemning Iran's state-sponsored terrorism and expressing support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, non-nuclear Republic of Iran. I'm also taking action to prevent the United States from rejoining the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, otherwise known as the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. Last year, I introduced the Iran Nuclear Deal Advice and Consent Act of 2021. This legislation prevents any federal funds from being used to rejoin the flawed Iran nuclear deal unless Congress ratifies the agreement as a treaty. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee introduced a companion bill to my legislation in the U.S. Senate. Additionally, I co-sponsored the Maximum Pressure Act, which would reimpose Trump-era sanctions on the Ayatollah's regime. We know that tough sanctions work against Iran. After the Trump administration implemented sanctions on the Iranian government, Iran's foreign currency reserve dropped 95%. The military budget dropped 25%, and Iranian militia fighters had their pay cut in half. As a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I will continue to work with you to support freedom, prosperity, and a brighter future for all of the Iranian people.
Thank you so much, Congressman Barr, and you're absolutely right. Sanctions are the way to isolate this regime, and the rest is on the Iranian people as they're protesting on a daily basis against this tyrannical regime. So with that, let me welcome Congressman Van Taylor, member of Homeland Security Committee.
Hi, I'm Congressman Van Taylor, and I proudly represent Texas's 3rd Congressional District. Today, it is my honor to join you in supporting a secular, democratic, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. This month, Iranian American communities across our nation will commemorate the anniversary of Iran's 1979 revolution and recommit themselves to the cause of freedom. The ability to peacefully assemble is one of the most valued principles of our democracy. Like you, I believe the people of Iran should have the fundamental right to express their beliefs, both political and religious, without fear of oppression. We stand with the people of Iran who battle tyranny and corruption. I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor of HRES 118, condemning Iran's state-sponsored terrorism, supporting their people's desire for democracy, and standing against terroristic threats wherever they may lie. Thank you for those who continue to serve as staunch defenders of freedom, human rights, and a fight for a non-nuclear Republic of Iran.
Thank you, Congressman Van Taylor. You and the rest of the co-sponsors of House Resolution 118 are certainly on the right side of history with your stance. At this point, let's take a quick look at the protests inside Iran that many of the members so far discussed during the year 2021.
Iran in 2021 saw escalating massive protests by a population growing furious over the multitude of economic, social, and political crises created by the regime. The last 12 months have seen an already battered economy weakening even further, as the regime tries to ward off more protests by triggering a dramatic rise in executions. Still, 8 major uprisings broke out in several provinces, while tens of thousands of teachers across the country staged rallies. These developments have made it abundantly clear that the regime cannot offer any viable solutions to the crises plaguing Iran, brought about by 4 decades of absolute dictatorship, mismanagement, ineptitude, and endemic state corruption. Some major protests in 2021 in Iran are: January, protests of retirees in 22 cities. February, armed rebellion in Sistan and Baluchistan province. June, strike by workers at 60 oil and petrochemical facilities in 19 cities. July, uprising of people of Khuzestan for lack of water that expanded to other provinces. September and December, 2 nationwide protests by teachers. November, uprising of tens of thousands of people in Isfahan and Shari Khord. December, strike in Kurdish cities against the execution of a Kurdish political prisoner. December, protests by retirees in 18 provinces. This is just a glimpse of the undercurrent of a looming fundamental change in Iran. Every day, protest movements by various social sectors, including workers, retired government employees, defrauded investors, youth, merchants, and women sweep dozens of cities across the country. Since the regime has no solutions except further suppression, these protests are expected to grow in both intensity and scale.
The amazing resiliency of the Iranian people that we see in everyday form of resistance during these protests. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are proud to introduce our next speaker from House of Representatives, Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, member of Appropriations Committee.
To every single person who expresses a solidarity with the cause of a free Iran, my gratitude, I am with you. This is a regime that has oppressed the people of Iran for way too long. This is a regime that has spread terrorism around the planet for way too long. This is a regime that must go. So to every single one who supports the cause of a free Iran, know that you have me on your side. Iran must and will be free because of people who are not willing to just wait until that moment, but who are willing to stand up and express solidarity with the cause of a free, democratic Iran.
Indeed, Congressman, this is a regime that must go. So our next speaker is Congresswoman Lisa Mclean, member of Armed Services Committee. Please welcome Congresswoman Mclean.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Lisa Mclean from Michigan's 10th Congressional District. This month marks the 43rd anniversary of Iran's revolution, a revolution that began with a desire for religious freedom. Unfortunately, that revolution was usurped by a radical religious regime. I'm a proud co-sponsor of House Resolution 118 and a proud supporter of the freedom for the Iranian people. I join you all in condemning human rights abuses against dissidents, including the massacre in 1988 and the suppression of political demonstrations in 1999, 2009, and 2017. I stand with the people of Iran who continue to hold legitimate and peaceful protests against an oppressive and corrupt regime. I am encouraged by you who are standing up against tyranny, and I am proud to stand with you.
Congresswoman Mclean, we are encouraged with your remarks. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Congressman French Hill, a valuable member of Congress and a member of the House Armed Services Committee.
Greetings to all of you on this anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran. I'm honored to speak to you today. Since the revolution, Iran's freedom has been held hostage by the religious fanaticism ruling the nation. The Iranian people deserve a democratic and free nation that will advocate for individual rights, including the pursuit of religious liberty. I stand alongside the Iranian people, rightfully calling for greater accountability. In November of 2019, the world witnessed one of the countless examples of the mullah's continued brutality when roughly 1,500 Iranians were killed during a protest against the tyrannical regime. I condemn the regime's further abuses against their own people, including the executions of political prisoners, the kidnapping of Iranians with dual citizenship with other countries, and the continued suppression of anti-regime political demonstrations. The Ayatollahs, the mullahs, and the military all continue to profit at the expense of ordinary Iranian people. No wonder they're calling for more accountability. I stand with the Iranian people, and I've introduced bipartisan legislation like H.R. 4592, the Holding Iranian Leaders Accountable Act. This will provide transparency into the corruption and illicit behavior of the leaders in Iran. I'm also proud to support and co-sponsor legislation in support of the Iranian people. House Resolution 118 expresses support for the people of Iran who are engaged in legitimate and peaceful protests against the current regime. The Iranian people have been long deprived of their fundamental freedoms. This is why in the past they've rejected dictatorship. This is why today the Iranian people are opposing the tyranny of religious fanaticism. I, along with all of us in the United States Congress and the American people, stand with the people of Iran. As we recognize the grim anniversary of the 1979 Revolution for Freedom, in quotes, in Iran, I have hope that one day Iran will in fact be free. I applaud all of you for your work and dedication in the pursuit of that critical goal. Thank you.
Congressman, we share your hope and certainly also know what you mentioned is very true. This regime cannot withstand transparency. With that, I want to welcome Congresswoman Angie Craig from Minnesota, member of the Energy and Commerce Committee.
Hi, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Angie Craig, and I'm so proud to represent Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District. I'm honored to join my colleagues in Congress and folks around the world in expressing my support for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Iran. In Congress, I'm working to support peace and stability in the Middle East by co-sponsoring H.R. 118, a resolution stating in no uncertain terms that the United States Congress is on the side of the Iranian people in their ongoing struggle to bring fundamental and lasting change to the home country. In co-sponsoring this resolution, I stand alongside members of both parties in condemning the human rights abuses of the Iranian regime, including their violent actions to suppress a peaceful, democratic protest movement in 2019, which resulted in the deaths of nearly 1,500 innocent Iranians. To this day, countless Iranians are in custody for the simple crime of expressing their desire for a true and open democracy. The United States must continue working to hold this regime accountable for its hostile and unlawful behavior, both against its own citizens and across the globe. Together, we stand opposed to single-party rule, to a small group of unelected autocrats ignoring the will of the people, and to a government who uses violence to suppress Iranian voices, specifically those who would dare to speak out in favor of change. We believe that the Iranian people should determine the future of Iran, not just a small but powerful group of unelected leaders. We stand with the brave Iranian people who have stood up for their rights and spoken out against a regime who refuses to grant even the most basic of freedoms for their countrymen and women. Freedom and democracy in Iran is achievable, and we commend you for your steadfast struggle for freedom. Thank you for all of your hard work and advocacy, and for your commitment to a free Iran. Have a great rest of your day.
And thank you so much, Congresswoman Craig. You know, it's so important that Iranian women hear from members such as yourself, leaders such as yourself in U.S. Congress. So with that, it's my great pleasure to also introduce Congresswoman Young Kim, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Please welcome Congresswoman Kim.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Young Kim, representative for California's 39th District. Today, on the anniversary of the 1979 Revolution for Freedom in Iran, we recognize and remember the sacrifice of Iranians that protested for freedom and change, a movement that was sadly hijacked by religious extremists. For over 40 years, the Iranian people have suffered under a regime who rules with no regard for its citizens' welfare and basic rights, while its elites continue to enrich themselves, pursue nuclear weapons, and fund terrorism and proxy wars against the region at the expense of economic opportunity and productivity for their nation. I condemn the Iranian regime's human rights abuses against its own people, including the massacre in 1988 and the suppression of political demonstrations. America, along with the people of Iran, will continue to push for the same freedom that the Iranian people first marched for in 1979. And I'll continue to advocate on the Foreign Affairs Committee for policies that pressure and deter the Iranian government and its elites, and support the Iranian people in their quest for a better government and better life. Thank you.
And thank you, Congresswoman Kim. You know, it's incredible to have such a strong bipartisan women of Congress standing with the people of Iran, and especially women of Iran. Our next speaker is Congressman Jeff Van Drew, member of Homeland Security. Please welcome Congressman Van Drew.
Good evening. This is Congressman Jeff Van Drew. First, I want to thank the Iranian American community of New Jersey for hosting this event and affording me the opportunity to speak with you. This month marks the anniversary of Iran's 1979 revolution, which ended the monarchist dynasty in Iran. For many years, Iranian citizens have been deprived of their fundamental freedoms and have experienced attacks on their human rights. Throughout the Iranian Revolution, the bravery and the sacrifice from the people of Iran has been second to none. Therefore, I am proud to be a co-sponsor of House Resolution 118, which condemns the Iranian regime's infringement on human rights and supports a free Iran. This resolution calls for the United States to be involved in any establishment of an international investigation into the 1988 massacre of Iranian dissidents. Ibrahim Raisi, who was responsible for committing this devastating massacre, needs to be held accountable for these extrajudicial crimes against humanity. The people of Iran have the right to establish a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. I proudly stand with the Iranian people who courageously continue to protest this corrupt regime. God bless the people of Iran, and God bless America.
And thank you, Congressman Van Drew. You raised the point about ending of a brutal dynasty with the 1979 revolution, and that struggle for freedom continues. And you also raised the point about holding Ibrahim Raisi accountable for his crimes against humanity and crimes of genocide. So I think we've talked a lot about what's happening inside Iran. We've seen clips of the activities of the resistance unit and how they are carrying the torch of a freedom that started before the 1979, and with 3 generations is the resistance unit that carries that torch today. So with that, I'd like to actually welcome you to watch a clip of some of the activities of brave men and women of resistance units inside Iran.
می توان و باید رژیم آخوندی را سرنگون کرد و مریم مهر تابان را به ایران زمین آورد. خواهر مریم، ایران را با شما پس میگیریم و زیباترین وطن را خواهیم ساخت.
You know, it's incredible to see the activities of the resistance units inside Iran and its acts of defiance, setting statues of Qasem Soleimani or his pictures on fire, or setting Khamenei or Khomeini's pictures on fire, really shows the true and entire rejection of this regime. Absolutely. And also includes a message of hope. Message by Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, message of Mr. Masoud Rajavi, the leader of the Iranian resistance. So it really shows how strong the Iran and the resistance units are very clear and how strong they are, and they continue to have their everyday form of resistance put on display for us.
And expanding.
Expanding, absolutely.
With that, we now would like to welcome Congresswoman Judy Chu. Is a member of the Budget Committee and is a longtime friend of the people of California and us across the country.
Hello, I'm Congressmember Judy Chu from California's 27th Congressional District. I'm so proud to join with my Iranian American friends to mark the anniversary of Iran's 1979 revolution. While many of those who courageously set out to reestablish democracy in Iran were fighting for a secular and free republic, the ideals of the revolution were quickly co-opted by the Ayatollahs, who instead ruled through violence, repression, and religious tyranny. And in fact, just 9 years later, in 1988, this regime was guilty of one of the worst political massacres in history, killing thousands of political prisoners who had dared to speak out. Today, this threat of violence remains, and instead of facing justice, the man responsible for much of that violence, Ibrahim Raisi, has been elevated to president, where he's able to continue to suppress democratic aspirations through force. For instance, just last month, in a trial that lasted only 5 minutes, the human rights activist Narges Mohammadi was sentenced to 8 years in prison and 70 lashes for the crime of protesting the deaths of peaceful protesters in 2019. And she is no exception. Thousands remain in jail, and so many others are afraid to speak out because of fear of the violent response from Iran's leaders. But we know that this government does not represent the Iranian people. That is why I'm always so proud to stand up for a free and democratic Iran, one that lives up to the ideals of the revolution and respects its people and its neighbors. And that is why I'm so proud to be a co-sponsor of House Resolution 118. This critical resolution condemns Iranian state-sponsored terrorist attacks and expresses support for the people of Iran who are engaged in legitimate and peaceful protests against the Iranian regime. I'm proud that this resolution has 250 bipartisan co-sponsors already, which is the majority of the House of Representatives. Having such a large bipartisan bill condemning the Iranian government's support for terrorism sends a clear signal to the people of Iran that they are not alone. The Iranian people deserve to be free from the harsh and violent rule of Iran's mullahs, and the world deserves to feel safe from Iranian support for terror and violence. I support your work to fulfill the dream of 1979 and establish a free and democratic Iran that works with the U.S. and others to build a safer world. So thank you all for your important work to promote human rights and a more free Iran.
Congresswoman Chu, thank you for being among the clear majority who have co-sponsored House Resolution 118. Certainly what the Iranian regime is doing should be an affront to humanity, and therefore they should be held accountable for these crimes. Our next speaker is Congressman Tom Emmer. He's the chairman of the House Republican Alliance.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Emmer, and I represent Minnesota's 6th Congressional District. Thank you for inviting me to join your event today. I am proud to stand with you in your mission for a free and democratic Iran. We come together today with shared goals: an end to repression, an end to persecution, and an end to terror. But we must not lose hope. The challenges ahead shouldn't discourage us, but instead strengthen our resolve. This Congress, I again co-sponsored a resolution of the U.S. House of Representatives condemning the state-sponsored terrorism that has plagued Iran for decades and expressing support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, non-nuclear republic. Together, we can look forward to the day when all Iranians will be able to live without fear. Thank you for your hope for a free Iran and for your hard work toward making this goal a reality. And thank you again for letting me join you today.
And thank you, Congressman, and we are looking forward to that day. So we have now Congressman Bayern Reynolds, member of Budget Committee, joining us. Please welcome Congressman Reynolds.
Congressman Byron Donalds, and I proudly represent Florida's 19th Congressional District. I am a patriot, and I'm somebody who's a fighter for liberty all across the globe. And it is really my honor, and I believe it's my duty, to stand with all of the Iranian people across the globe who are still fighting for freedom and liberty in the Republic of Iran. I'm a proud co-sponsor of House Resolution 118, which is affirming the need to having a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. It is important that the United States stand firm in solidarity with the Iranian people who just seek to be free, who want to have a government that's actually working for them, not one that's committed, that's committed, frankly, to what the Ayatollah and the current regime wants. We want an Iran, the same Iran that you want, one that lives in harmony and peace, not just for its people, but with its neighbors and with the global community. That's what I'm fighting for every day. And so I take this time to stand with you, the continued fight for freedom for all of the Iranian people, not just in Iran, but across the globe.
And thank you, Congressman Donalds, for your solidarity and continuing to fight this good fight with us. We are now proud to introduce Congressman Tony Cardenas, member of Energy and Commerce.
Congressman Tony Cardenas. I have the honor of representing California's 29th Congressional District. I'm so sorry that I can't be with you in person today, but as a proud co-sponsor of House Resolution 118, I wanted to let you know that you have my support and I stand with you for a free Iran. For 40 years, the Iranian regime has suppressed its people and exported its brand of fundamentalism and terrorism at every opportunity. For far too long, the Iranian people have been deprived of fundamental freedoms. The Iranian people deserve the right to vote, to be confident that their elections are free and fair, and to experience gender, religious, and ethnic equality. I join you to call for a democratic, secular, non-nuclear republic in Iran. The United States Congress has shown on many occasions that it stands with the Iranian people, and I'm so proud to be one of the members of Congress who has supported and will continue to support meaningful democratic change in Iran. A democratic country where the ballot is the standard and governance is the key to prosperity for Iranians and others in the entire region. So I want to thank you again for inviting me to address your conference, and I look forward to a day when we can celebrate a free and democratic Iran. Thank you so much.
Congressman Cardenas, thank you very much for continuously supporting our communities, both in California and our efforts in the United States Congress. Your leadership is to be applauded. Our next speaker is Congressman Greg Pence. He's a member of the Energy and Commerce Committees.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to Dr. Asani for the invitation to join you all virtually. I join the Iranian American community of Indiana today, which marks the anniversary of Iran's 1979 revolution. This revolution ended the monarchy in Iran with tremendous bravery and sacrifice. This month, I stand with the Iranian American communities across Indiana and the nation in recommitting the cause of freedom that was usurped by religious fascism ruling Iran. That is why myself and 180 of my Republican colleagues co-sponsored H-Res 118, standing on the side of the Iranian people. This resolution stands against the tyranny of religious rulers who have brought nothing but death and destruction to the Iranian people, the region, and beyond. The Iranian people have been deprived of their fundamental freedoms by a dictatorship government and religious tyranny. We must and will continue to stand with you all. Here in Washington, we will continue to support the Iranian people. And I want to thank you all, and we will continue to advocate for the rights of the Iranian people here in Congress.
Thank you very much, Congressman Pence. Certainly, it's tremendous bravery that you mentioned inside Iran is a notable fact that you brought about. We appreciate your leadership and thank you for standing on the side of our community and that of the Iranian people. Our next speaker is Congressman William Timmons. He's a member of Financial Services Committee.
Hi, everyone. This is Congressman William Timmons, representing the 4th District of South Carolina. I'm pleased to join you today to express my support for a democratic and secular Iran. I believe the Iranian people should determine the future of Iran, and I support their desire to end the tyranny and establish a democracy in Iran. This is why I'm proud to co-sponsor House Resolution 118, a resolution before Congress that expresses support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran, and condemns violations of human rights and state-sponsored terrorism by the Iranian government. We should all condemn Iranian state-sponsored terrorism and its use of diplomatic privileges to inflict harm on innocent people around the world. Freedom and democracy in Iran is achievable, and I commend you as you stand strong against tyranny. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you on the anniversary of the 1979 revolution for freedom in Iran. The American people support a free Iran.
And thank you so much, Congressman Timmons. And of course, American people do support a free Iran. We really appreciate your continued effort on this struggle for freedom and democracy in Iran. It is now a great pleasure to introduce our next member of Congress, Congressman John Curtis, member of Budget Committee.
I'd like to speak today in support of the Iranian people. The Iranian people have been deprived of their fundamental freedoms by an oppressive government. In November, December 2019, popular protests against the Iranian regime began and rapidly spread to at least 100 cities throughout the country. In response, Iran's rulers shut down access to the internet and proceeded to kill approximately 1,500 people. Following this move to shut down the internet, I joined Representative McCall to introduce a bill to codify the Open Technology Fund, the program used to restore internet access to Iran so the outside world could see what was happening. I stand with the people of Iran who are continuing to hold legitimate and peaceful protest against an oppressive and a corrupt regime, and I recognize the rights of the Iranian people and their struggle to establish a democratic, secular Republic of Iran. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Congressman Curtis. You raised a very good point in terms of Iranian people's access to internet. It is critical that we support their free and unfiltered access to internet. You know, Congressman Curtis talked about access to internet, but we also saw 2 weeks ago inside Iran, where the resistance unit actually took upon themselves to disrupt one of the most suppressive organ of the Iranian regime, which is its televisions, broadcasting, national television, as well as the radio, multiple radio stations and network. They actually disrupted more than 27 radio and television stations. Wow. And even to my knowledge, some of them are still struggling to get back online. Right. So why don't we watch a quick clip on that impressive event where the resistance units are actually really shaming the Iranian regime, who is not even able to protect its own crown jewel, which is its system of propaganda of television.
Their institutions are falling apart.
Exactly, radio. So let's watch a clip together.
امروز ما همچنان افتخار میکنیم که وقتی گفتیم مرگ بر ارتجاع پاش ایستادیم همچنان که
تصویر شبکه یک سیما برای لحظاتی حک شد. عصر امروز در میان پخش آنونس برنامه‌ها به مدت 10 ثانیه تصاویری از سران منافقین و صوت یکی از سخنرانی‌های آنها روی آنتن شبکه یک دیده شد. مسئولان فنی سازمان صدا و سیما میگویند احتمالاً سرور مورد حمله هکری قرار گرفته. بر اساس این گزارش اتفاقاتی شبیه به این در شبکه قرآن، رادیو پیام و جوان هم رخ داده. حالا آقای علیدادی معاون فنی سازمان الان تلفنی همراه ما هستند تا توضیحات بیشتر از ایشون بپرسیم. آقای علیدادی خدمت شما سلام می‌کنم. خدا قوت. خواهش می‌کنم در خصوص این موضوع توضیحات بیشتری به ما بدید.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. من عرض سلام دارم خدمت شما و همه بینندگان این بخش خبری. خب همکاران ما درگیر کار هستن و دارن بررسی میکنن جزئیات امر رو. با توجه به اینکه به هر حال تجهیزات امنیتی برای زیرساخت‌های مد نظر از قبل در نظر گرفته شده بود، به نظر میاد که این اتفاقی که افتاده یک کار ساده‌ای نیست، کار فوق‌العاده پیچیده‌ای است که به احتمال خیلی زیاد کسانی که صاحب این تکنولوژی هستن میتونن به هر حال از بک‌دورها و اون امکاناتی که خودشون از قبل روی سیستم‌ها در نظر گرفتن بهره برداری بکنن و بتونن صدمه بزنن به زیرساخت‌ها. همکاران ما دقیقاً دارن بررسی میکنن. امیدواریم که در کوتاه‌ترین زمان ممکن بتونیم علت و محدوده مشکل رو بررسی و اعلام بکنیم.
آقای دکتر خیلی ممنون. پشت هر کوه بلند سبززاری است پر از یاد خدا.
You know, this coordinated act of defiance by the resistance units inside Iran really sent a very powerful message to the Iranian regime that their days are indeed numbered.
Yes, indeed. We talked about the falling apart of their key institutions, including their mass media. Well, with that, I want to introduce Congressman Stewart. He's a member of the Select Committee on Intelligence in the United States Congress.
Hey, Congressman Stewart here from Utah. I want to thank all of you who are involved in any way to help bring democracy and freedom to the good people of Iran. As you know better than I do, February marks the anniversary from 1979, where these real efforts to try to bring, again, freedom and human rights protections to the Iranian people took place. The fight has gone on since then. Obviously, we've had some step forward, but some pretty meaningful and painful steps back as well. That's one of the reasons I'm supporting HR 118, which condemns the human rights abuses in Iran. It recognizes Iran as a state sponsor of terrorism. It's an effort to highlight and to bring pressure on the leadership in Iran that is denying these basic rights to their own people. We've had many incidences since then in which the Iranian people have tried to rise up, tried to call for these protections for themselves, for their families, for their children. 1988, the massacre, in 99, in 09, in 2017. Thank you for having the courage to support the people of Iran. We fight with you. We want to support you. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congressman Stewart, and sorry for the technical difficulties we had there in getting the clear image from your speech. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Congressman Ken Buck. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee and a good friend of our U.S. community altogether.
Hi, this is Congressman Ken Buck. In America, we enjoy the blessings of hard-earned peace, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our founding fathers recognized that these liberties are inalienable rights for all people. As the leader of the free world, we have staunchly defended, preserved, and advanced this freedom, not only for ourselves, but for others suffering under tyrannical rule. This year, as we mark the 43rd anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution and Iran hostage crisis, we remember the Iranians who died in their fight for freedom and the innocent Americans who were captured during the takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. To our Iranian Coloradans today, I want to tell you that as your representative in Congress, I dream the same dream as you, that one day the people of Iran will have the opportunity to determine their country's future for themselves, apart from a tyrant's rule. On this anniversary, I want the Iranian American community of Colorado to know that the United States believes fervently that the pursuit of inalienable rights is worth fighting for. We condemn the human rights violations that have historically taken place and continue to occur in Iran. And we stand with the Iranian people in their fight for freedom. It is my greatest hope that the next 43 years of Iran's history will not be further scarred by repression and terror, but rather will be marked by the freedom and prosperity for the people of Iran. Thank you, and God bless you.
And thank you so much, Congressman. Indeed, freedom and prosperity for the Iranian people. So we now go to Congressman Mike Garcia, member of Budget Committee.
It's been 43 years since the revolution, but the fight for rights and freedoms continues today. More than 1.5 million Americans trace their family roots back to the country of Iran. A large majority of these Americans came to America following the events that unfolded after the historic 1979 revolution. In 1979, the Iranian people stood up with bravery and sacrifice to end the Shah's single-party dictatorship. Unfortunately, they traded a Shah's single-party rule for a mullah's theocracy and religious fascism. Since 1981, the regime has killed over 120,000 people for their political views. The mullahs stole the legitimacy of the revolution and made the environment in Iran even worse. The Iranian people have the same desire today for a democratic, multi-party system that they did 43 years ago. We saw this through the extensive boycott of the June 2021 elections and the continued uprisings by the people. I stand proudly today with the Iranian people in their pursuit of freedom from the tyrannical religious leaders, and I'm proud to honor them on this 43rd anniversary of the revolution.
Thank you so much, Congressman Garcia. Indeed, a multi-party system is what the Iranian people are struggling for, and democracy, non-nuclear, secular republic. Our next member of Congress is Congressman Doug LaMalfa, member of Agriculture Committee.
Good evening. This is Congressman Doug LaMalfa from California's 1st District. Thanks for having me with your event here tonight. So as we know, for decades, Iran has been taking away the rights of their people by an oppressive and a corrupt dictatorship and the regime that's been in power for so long. So despite these human rights abuses, the massacres, and the state-sanctioned suppression of political demonstrators and speech, Iran's resistance movement is at its strongest ever. Much like the US, when our founders fought for a revolution in 1776 for freedom of expression, freedom of religion for the people of the colonies here in America, the Iranian people have taken up to the streets to fight for freedom of religion, political opinion, assembly, and a representative government. Iran is at a turning point, with tyrannical regime on one side and freedom on the other. So I'm an adamant supporter of our own US Constitution and hope that one day the ideals of these freedoms can be enjoyed, that are enjoyed here on American soil, can also be commonplace across the globe, like in Iran. So in response to the Iranian people's deprivation of their fundamental freedoms, I've joined 250 of my colleagues in co-sponsoring H.R. 118. This bipartisan bill will condemn Iran's state-sponsored terrorism while supporting the Iranian people's desire for a democratic and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. Ibrahim Raisi must be removed from office and tried for his decades of crime against humanity. The people of Iran must have the right to determine their own future and to ensure that the rights of expression, religious belief, political opinion, and assembly are respected, just as we enjoy here in the United States. These are things that all people would love and enjoy. Even if they have a little different way of doing it from country to country, these are things in their hearts, I think, of all people on this earth.
Thank you, Congressman. It is indeed important that the people of Iran are afforded a representative government, which you mentioned is absolutely correct. Our next speaker is Congressman Russ Fulcher, a member of the Education Committee in the United States Congress.
This is Congressman Russ Fulcher from Idaho. Thank you to the pro-democracy activists fighting to achieve freedom for the people of Iran, both in the United States, in Iran, and around the world. I have proudly co-sponsored the Bipartisan House Resolution 118, a resolution condemning Iran's state-sponsored terrorism and expressing support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. The terrorist threat of Iran's leadership regime extends well past its borders. Iran must not threaten its neighbors. Last February, a court in Belgium sentenced an Iranian diplomat and his 3 accomplices for their role in planning to plant a bomb in the 2018 Free Iran gathering in Paris, France. Iran has also targeted the Saudi ambassador to the United States in Washington, D.C., and has used its proxies to spread violence in places such as Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and plotted other attacks throughout Europe. I oppose the misguided Iranian nuclear deal. It does not require Iran to abandon terrorism, be a stable neighbor, move toward democratic change, or release political prisoners seeking peaceful democratic change. The people of Iran must have the right to determine their own future and to ensure that their rights of expression, religious belief, political opinion, assembly, and a representative government are truly respected. The barbaric imprisonment and execution of the courageous pro-democracy activists must finally end. I stand with the Iranian people against the dictatorship in Iran for freedom, democracy, human rights, prosperity, and a non-nuclear Republic Iran. Iran will be free. Thank you for your efforts for the freedom, the prosperity, and the future of the Iranian people.
Thank you, Congressman Fulcher. Indeed, Iran will be free. But you mentioned a very important point, which is past the Iranian regime's terrorism is beyond what is going on inside Iran, but it is across the globe. You mentioned its attempt to bomb the Our Free Iran rally in 2018, and the Iranian regime diplomats who are now serving time for that crime.
20 years.
20 years indeed. Thank you. With that, Congressman Andrew Garbarino is our next speaker. He's a member of Infrastructure Committee in the House of Representatives.
Hi, I'm Congressman Andrew Garbarino from New York. I join you today because I stand with the people of Iran and their dream for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. I stand with the people of Iran who are continuing to hold legitimate and peaceful protests against an oppressive and corrupt regime. Freedom and fundamental human rights are core American principles, and the Iranian people deserve the same. They deserve to peacefully protest without being met with violence, oppression, and human rights abuses. They deserve to criticize their government without being targeted and killed as dissidents of the regime. As we reflect on the anniversary of Iran's 1979 revolution, know that we in Congress are with you in your pursuit for freedom and self-determination.
Thank you so much, Congressman, and thank you for your support. We now hear from Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer, ranking member of the House Committee on Small Businesses.
For decades, the Iranian government has been a state sponsor of terrorism and malign influence across the Middle East, and the Iranian people continue to be deprived of their fundamental freedoms as a result. I will continue to support efforts to extend sanctions against Iran and support the freedom the people of Iran deserve. This Congress, I'm proud to join 180 of my colleagues as an original co-sponsor of House Res 118, a resolution condemning Iran for their human rights violations and state-sponsored terrorism, and expressing support for a free, non-nuclear, democratic Iran. I will also continue to advocate for legislation and initiatives that support freedom and prosperity under the Iranian government's oppressive regime, as Iranians in Missouri and around the world continue to bring the regime's terrible human rights violations and misuse of diplomatic privileges into perspective. I will stand with them and supporters of freedom everywhere.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Iranian American community of Missouri really are very proud to continue to have your support. Our next member of Congress is Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, member of Energy and Commerce Committee. Please welcome Congresswoman Lesko.
Hi, I'm U.S. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko from the great state of Arizona. I represent constituents that live in the Phoenix metropolitan area. I want to thank you for once again inviting me to speak at your annual conference. As you may know, I'm an original co-sponsor of House Resolution 118, the resolution that condemns Iranian state-sponsored terrorism and supports freedom for the Iranian people. I want to applaud you for everything that you are doing in your communities and throughout the nation. Please know that I support freedom for the Iranian people. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lesko. Certainly, your constituents in Arizona are appreciative of your contribution to our event today. Our next speaker is Congresswoman Ashley Hinson. She is a member of our Appropriations Committee in the House.
Hi there, I'm Congresswoman Ashley Hinson from Iowa's 1st Congressional District. I stand with the people of Iran against the tyrannical Iranian regime. I have and will continue to condemn this regime for its egregious human rights abuses against its own people. The brutal regime has worked time and time again to stomp out any resistance to their tyranny, and it silences dissent. Despite this threat, the Iranian people continue to fight for their voices to be heard and for their rights. The people are heroic and inspiring, a beacon of hope for Iran and for freedom fighters everywhere around the world. So please know that in Congress, I will always support the Iranian people and echo their calls for freedom over tyranny.
Congresswoman, your energy mirrors that of the Iranian people. Thank you for your activism for free Iran. Our next speaker is Congressman Ken Calvert. He's a member of the Budget Committee.
Hi, this is Congressman Ken Calvert. I believe the people of Iran deserve better than living under a tyrannical terrorist regime. Like all people, the people of Iran are entitled to liberties. The people of Iran should be able to choose their own future through democracy. Rest assured, I'll continue to stand with the people of Iran in their fight for these rights.
Thank you so much, Congressman. You know, in addition to the remarks we've heard from more than 50 bipartisan members of Congress, we have also received last-minute messages from other members, which we will share on social media and our website. And these messages include Congresswoman Linda Sanchez from California, Congressman Pete Sessions from Texas, Congressman Tony Gonzalez from Texas, Congressman Rick Allen from Georgia, Congresswoman Carol Miller from West Virginia, and also Congresswoman Ann Eshoo from California. So we really thank all of the members of Congress who joined us today. We appreciate your bipartisan voice for the call of democracy, human rights, and the people of Iran.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I echo those sentiments as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we heard from both Republicans and Democrats, chair and ranking members of various House committees. The people of Iran, they're saying, reject the Shah and the Mullah dictatorships. And they stand with the people of Iran as their desire for a non-nuclear, secular Republic Iran continues.
And that was a key theme that we heard from every single member of bipartisan members of Congress. So at this point, let me also recognize once more members of OIAC chapters across 43 states. Thank you again for joining us. Your continued effort echoing the voice of the Iranian people is resonated today, and it's resonated and continue to stand with the Iranian people as we struggle for democracy and human rights. Let me also thank the media who joined us today. Let me thank you to all my colleagues today who made this event possible. Thanks everyone, and have a great day, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.